thing.
Keema,
George
you a
Washington
Cowboy
was no
fan,
different
Keema?
than Donald Trump, was he?
Keema, you a
Yeah,
Cowboy fan?
I am. I am. But the sad thing is, I think what's bothering me is that now they're putting policies into place. So I understand. I think all of us have dealt with some level of racism on our jobs. I mean, I've been bypassed for promotions and, they'll write me up for things that other people get away with and whatnot. But when I think my thing, especially like when I was working, I had one manager who would tell me, well, we're just doing this because it's the unwritten rules. So I'm following the rules of the policies of what the company says, and they would pick and choose the things that they wanted to do. So I think, personal opinion is one thing. I don't care what you think of me, but when you actually now take that opinion and put it into policy so you can legally hold me down and hold me back, that's when I have a problem.
So to all the white people that are listening right now, that's racism. That's how you define it.
That's how you define it. Well, let me start by trying to introduce, provide some narrative as to who we have here. We have with us today Miss Keema Mingo, a Portsmouth native and now a Charlotte-based filmmaker. Her credits include Fox's Shots Fired, Oprah Winfrey's The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which that was a HBO film, right?
Yes.
That was an amazing film. She did The Mindhunter with Netflix and TLC Married by Mom and Dad, among other things, including Obamaland. She is, and all of those are phenomenal accolades. The one thing I think that is probably her greatest starring role is when she participated, where she was in the Marching Spartan Legion at Norfolk State University's band, Behold the Green and Gold.
Exactly. Yes.
Come on,
yes,
fellas,
yes.
Can I get a little bit of Hold the Green and Gold from y'all?
I'm so, listen, I was riding with you, Maynard, until you start talking. What? Green, what is that?
Green and gold, baby. Behold.
All right, I'm going to let you have that, Maynard. Okay.
Let me, and part of what I really liked about Keema, I had the luxury or the pleasure of participating in the panel last year, where we discussed the role of the African American man in Hollywood, and it was a little bit longer of a discussion than that. But by and large, it was a discussion about how African Americans are portrayed in Hollywood, particularly males. And Keema brought a unique perspective that had a lot to do with the roles that we got from Birth of a Nation, 1915, D.W. Griffith's film that was highly controversial at that time and just even worse today. But thank you for joining us, Keema. We appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yes.
Before we get started all the way in, let me let, the other two black guys with their mics, bring whatever smoke they're going to bring. Because later on in the other part of the show, they're going to come at me. I know. That's why I'm trying. I'm like, if you could bring the smoke while we have a guest, or maybe you might actually behave better that we have a guest, and I don't have to hear no smoke later.
My mama, even though my mama didn't tell me the truth about the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus, she's looking like, huh? This is just an issue that we have amongst us three that I'm dealing with.
No, my mother, an issue that you have.
My mother did teach me to act appropriately when we have company, Maynard, so you don't have to worry about me today, okay?
Okay.
So, Keema, let me jump in by asking, about, because I was reading an article last city. I literally just got back, into town, and I was reading an article on the plane about, and I was just literally trying to find it, but about, there's too much black film about black people, right? Which is really unfortunate. That's such a sad, that's not even true. But anyway, the article basically was talking about, it's really a shame that African American filmmakers, in a sense, like yourself, have to, make films that highlight the issues of what's going on in the black community and what's going on, what has happened in, the history of the Black community as well, i.e. slaves and so forth and so on. And I wanted to get your take on that because, there's always the narrative from, I won't say always, but let's take it from the white perspective of, oh, you guys should just shut up and allow for slavery to exist, get over it, move on. And why do you, as a filmmaker, think it's extremely important to continue to tell those stories as an African-American filmmaker, to continue to highlight, even like Spike Lee this weekend, whether it came out last weekend or, on the 10th, to highlight the Black Klansmen and so forth and so on. Why is it important for you to take African-American stories and continue to put them on whatever screen they are?
Okay, so my answer is going to be twofold, because that's a struggle that I have as a Black filmmaker and as a Black female filmmaker. So on one hand, yes, I believe we need to tell those stories, because if we don't tell them, people will forget, or they will rewrite history and say, well, it really wasn't that bad. Oh, no, what you're saying is a bunch of fluff. And, the thing now is fake news. And so if we don't tell the truth about our history, just like everybody else does, because I have yet to hear one person tell the Jews to get over the Holocaust. Now, of course, you have the Nazis who say it never happened. But the general consensus is that people respect what happened to them. And especially being that some of them are still survivors and they're still here with us. We've got monuments and they have all these things to respect the Jewish plight and the Holocaust, and they're not going to let us forget. But the something that goes on here in the United States where the perpetrators of the crime don't want to face the fact that they're still perpetuating them and that these things are still happening and have happened. And I think that's one of the issues, because I was talking to someone who said that when you go to Germany, that what Germany did was, first of all, they apologized for the Holocaust. And then they have reminders all over to let you know that it happened, to let you know that they apologized for it. They want to move on and heal. But because America will not acknowledge what she has done, it's hard for us to heal from it. So we as Black filmmakers, we have to continue to show people, because of course, there's adults who come of age every day, and they're not taught the truth about who we are as Black people, what we've done and where we've come from. And if we stop talking, there's going to be a generation of people who have no idea what has happened, no idea the evolution that we've gone through, the struggles that we've gone through, and they're going to have this multicultural mindset about things, and they're going to think that everything is equal. Because every generation has things easier, so we have a tendency to not understand and respect the struggles of the prior generation. And what we can't have happen is a group of people who come through the ranks thinking, oh, no, this is normal. This is, it's normal for women to have equal pay, even though we don't. It's normal for Black men to such and such and such. We have a Black president. There are some people who are living now who've never had a white president up until Trump because they're that young. We can't let them think that the strides that we've made are normal, because it's not. So on that hand, I believe we need to still tell those stories. But on the other hand, as a filmmaker, I want to be able to define my Blackness, and I don't always want to be conscious of it. Sometimes I just want to do a film that's about laughter, relationships, it's about a prank, it's about whatever, and it's not seen through the Black lens. Because I get tired of carrying the burden of my race all the time. Because then when people, have me on a panel or they want to talk about my films, it's always the Black perspective. I mean, I even had, when I was doing the casting for my web series pilot. My web series is called Repercussions, the show. It's about what happens when women stop living by other people's rules and start making up their own. And so I have a variety of women, but my lead is a Black woman. And I did that on purpose. But one thing that this young lady asked me who was wanting to audition, she asked me, is this a Black thing? Now, this girl is white and Mexican, but she can pass as white. And she was telling me how her brother is discriminated against because his skin is darker and he looks Mexican, but she looks more white. So she gets a pass, and she's married to a white man. So of course that gives her a pass as well. And so as a Black woman, I want to be able to just create great stories. It's not the Black thing, because once you put us in that box, people now bring their judgments and their preconceived notions about what it is to be Black. So like I said, on one hand, we have to continue to tell our history, because there are lies, there are people out here who want to stifle it. But then as we're going through this evolution, allow me to define what I believe is one Black experience, because there's no such thing as the Black experience. And for anyone to say we have too many films about Blackness, they are really smoking crack. There's something wrong with them, because that is just a bald-faced lie.
Let me ask you this, because, here's what I think what Black films do. I think that it helps with, and as a filmmaker, does it help with the domino effect of learning your history? Nobody knew about Hidden Figures until Hidden Figures was on the screen, right? And then it's like, oh, let me go and do the backstory. Now, I haven't seen Spike Lee's Black Klansman, but I went and did the research about, who even knew that there was even a Black Klansman? So when you do a film, like Henrietta Lacks, does that help with allowing for the consumer to go and actually do the research on their film, on that person, on their history a lot more? And does it pique their interest in actually wanting to know more about African-American history on both sides of the fence, white and Black?
Yeah, I agree with that, because there's a lot of our history that we don't know. I mean, I've seen videos come through my Facebook timeline talking about the Black African female warriors back in the day, way before colonization and all that. And I'm like, wow, this would make a great film, because we just don't hear about those things. So, of course, as an artist, we do have that privilege and I think also responsibility to pull up these little known stories and to tell the truth about who we are, what we've discovered, what we've created, how we've impacted society and the world as a whole. So yes, I do believe that those types of things are necessary, because whether people like it or not, Henrietta Lacks, her cells were taken, and those cells have been used to cure all kinds of diseases. And yet they named it HeLa, H-E-L-A, so they could hide the fact that it was a Black woman. And then they were able to sell it and use it and experiment on it and cure all these cancers and stuff that we have. But to the average person, it's just HeLa, and they don't know it's a Black woman. So yes, we have to continue to tell those stories, do our research, because unfortunately, school is not going to do it. A lot of people are not inspired to do it on their own. So if we can give it to them through our art form, and then that inspires them to go look up more stuff, then absolutely, I say we can continue those stories. Absolutely.
All right, so let me ask this last question, and I'll pass the ball, because as you can see, I'm the hog of the of the podcast.
You hogging the ball. You hogged him just a little bit.
But and I'm glad you said it about the hiding part, because I just was reading about Uncle Nearest, because I was just leaving Chicago, and I went and bought a bottle of Uncle Nearest whiskey, who was the one who actually taught Jack Daniels to actually distill whiskey. And I didn't even know that, who was a slave. And I was like, oh, I never even knew that. Let me go and buy a bottle and just, try it out. But, but my point is, I was listening to an interview with Laura Coates on, Sirius XM. And, they were talking about the kneeling, and they were talking about the NFL and the protests. And so one caller called in and he said, look, he said, my favorite three actors are Robert De Niro, Denzel Washington, as well as Meryl Streep as an actress. And he said, when I go to the movies, all I want to do is be entertained. I don't care about their political view. I don't care about, kneeling. I don't care about what they care, about their issues when it comes to the urban community or whatever community that they represent, or so forth and so on. He was speaking about, Meryl Streep and women in Hollywood and so forth and so on. And he was like, I don't care about none of those things. I just want to be entertained. And so as a filmmaker and working with actors and actresses, do you think that it's important for, those people to express their political view while doing a movie, in the movie, or so forth and so on? Or is that something that they should actually leave quiet within themselves so the consumer can continue to be entertained? That was a layup, right, by the way.
Well, I'll take it and I'll give you a slam dunk. So this is the deal. People, for some reason, when it comes to Black people and money, there are those who feel like you just need to shut up and be grateful for the fact that you have money and you don't have the right to say anything. Right. But they forget that these are people. Your job does not dictate your freedom of speech. And we feel like those who are in any form of entertainment don't have a right to speak up for what they believe and what they want. But if that was the case, and if all Black actors and filmmakers felt that way, then Lena Horne and Eartha Kitt and Jim Brown and all those peoples back in the 50s and the 60s who said, I will not perform, I will not do this if my people have to go through the back door, if there's going to be a segregated audience, then the impact wouldn't be felt today. So just because your job is to be an entertainer doesn't mean you don't have the right to speak. And then also, I have the right to take my perspective and put it into my art form. So it would be like telling a baker, well, you have to use regular sugar, you have to use wheat flour, and you have to use eggs if they're a vegan. So you're telling me a baker can't express their personal views, but I want it to be environmentally friendly. I don't want anything that had a face on it, so I'm going to use almond flour and flaxseed eggs. as opposed to an egg from a chicken. So do we get to tell them, well, no, you just need to just bake. And you need to bake the way it's always been done with the wheat flour and the regular eggs. No, and butter. No, you can't use vegan butter. You can't use a flax egg, and you can't use stevia instead of regular sugar. So when it comes to us artists, we have every right to put into our art form the messages that we want to put, just like people have the right to not support it. If you don't like it, that's okay. I mean, I post things and I do a lot of films and projects with women. I get attacked by men all the time, especially white men. So I just got to say that I've only had one brother come after me just a little bit, but I didn't block him like I had to do the other dudes because he wasn't as vicious. But when I put a project out and I say, okay, I'm doing a project, here are the roles, and it's 5 women, literally the men come for me. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you have the right to teach this class? Who do you think you are to do this film? Why is it only women? So whenever anyone wants to put themselves in something, those who are in the position of authority or authority, I use that with quotation marks, or those who are in a position where they've always benefited, feel a threat from those who are the marginalized ones who come through and express themselves the way that they want. So any artist, I believe, can put whatever they want in their films. Because if you think about film history, Germany used film and other foreign countries used film as propaganda. They used it as a way to teach people about the government and what they wanted the message to be. Woodrow Wilson took Birth of a Nation and took it to the White House and showed it in the White House. So for people to say, well, these actors need to just shut up and act and you don't have the right to do this and so, well, guess what? One of our former presidents did that. Other foreign countries did that as well. They used film because they saw how powerful it was. They saw how many people you can affect and get all in one room at the same time and get them on the same sheet of music with this mindset. So they use it for what they want. But when now we want to speak against atrocities or we want to bring up the ills of society, now all of a sudden we got to shut up and we can't do it. But when it's for your benefit, now it's fair game.
Welcome to America. So here's my question. And this is probably it's going to sound like a pitch because this might be a 3 black guys with the mic pitch here. But are you familiar with Otis Blackwell?
No. Mm-mm.
Spud, Maynard?
No, you driving by yourself, homie.
Maynard, you don't know who Otis Blackwell is?
You educate us, Lamont.
Is he getting the Mo Blackwell?
No. He ain't Mo Blackwell's daddy. No, no, that's Art Blackwell.
No, okay, and you know, just to let our guests know, I'm in the music business, so my background is heavy in music. So there were a couple points that you touched on before, made me automatically think about Otis Blackwell. Well, Otis Blackwell is the man that actually wrote Elvis Presley's biggest hits.
I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And when I heard you talk about how, you know, our stories need to be told, that is a story that I'm seeing more and more people start to talk about a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And those are one of the stories that I think we really need to figure out how do we get, you know, because there was always this thing about, you know, Elvis never really was the king of rock and roll, that he used to sneak down to the little juke joints and see what the black people. But now we have on record the man that actually did it. Yep. And if you Google him, you can see he did a few interviews and actually did some TV interviews back in the 70s, which I had never seen until then. So it brings me back to my question, because I just wrote an article for a industry online publication, mm-hmm. and it talked about how there's a Jewish person in the music business and how he is the industry's newest villain. But we got to talk about this later offline because I'm getting a little flack because they don't want to print it. They're like, Lamont, that's a little too risque. You might not want to talk about that. So my question to you is, do you and how did they get so much influence over the movie industry, over the music business, to where they have this fear that we can't speak anything that is something that they deem to be in a great, perfect light, and that they have this thing where they don't, like you said, they don't let us forget. And this is not a Jewish bashing thing.
No.
You know, I say this all the time. Some of my best friends, my next door neighbor to my right.
No. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that.
No.
That's what white folks say. Maybe, I'm not racist. Some of my best friends are black. And then they say the most racist thing in the world.
Oh, that did sound a little bit. But no, I mean, and I've even asked them, some of them are younger and older, like, how did this come to be? You know what I mean? Like you said, in Germany, they talk about the Holocaust. How you know?
Well, I got a question. Is this a question or is it a statement?
Where's the question mark?
I don't know if I really had a question. I was trying to get
okay.
things
There's
out.
a lot of meat on the, there's a lot of meat on the bone.
I think his question is how did Jewish people basically get to the point of running Hollywood?
Yeah, in her opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, they were the ones with the money. They were the ones who were helping to put all of this together. I mean, that's basically.
Did you miss the Bugsy Siegel, time when Bugsy Siegel was running Hollywood? Anyway, so go ahead.
Okay.
Did you miss the part in The Godfather when he was saying, all the Jews basically run Hollywood? Did you miss that part? But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, but it's true. I mean, you can look at the names, you can look at the production companies, you can look at the history. I mean, that's just how it is. They're the ones with the money. They're the ones who finance the things. I mean, we saw it happen. Well, we weren't there, but we saw it in music. We see it in film where they're the ones who are financing. They're the ones who are writing the checks. They're the ones who get to puppet everything that happens. And so the ones with the money are the ones with power and control, which is why they're the ones who control the types of narratives that come out. So if something is too risque, like what you've written, and it may offend someone, even though it's the truth, you just can't keep it real in that aspect because you might offend some of the people who are giving money, the sponsors and all of that, because really that's what matters. The bottom line, the dollar is what matters. Green is what matters. Everything else is secondary. So if you're going to do something that's going to risk the green, they're not going to be down with that.
So, speaking of how this control, and then you brought in the Woodrow Wilson showing the film in the White House. One of the things that we were able to discuss in that last panel that we were on together was what roles came or emanated from Birth of a Nation, and how those roles affect Black television and Black film today, as well as how we, as we're three Black guys, how Black men are seen in the world, or at least in America. And there were some unique roles that you discussed, or categories of Black men. Can you kind of break down a little bit about that? Like, can you tell me a little bit about the categories, and we can try to connect them to today's logic?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to show you the book that I got it from. So here's the book. Hopefully you can see it. It says Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks.
Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks.
Yes, so this is the book that I'm referencing. And I actually got this book when I was attending Norfolk State University.
Behold.
Behold. And this was in my film history class. And I love the fact that...
Hold on. Did you have Edgerton for film history?
Was it Edgerton? I think it was Edgerton. Yes, okay. Little short guy. Yes.
It's all right, Mom. We'll just wait while they,
You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put this on mute because they just making me feel so.
All right, well, Lamont, and we still haven't taken up as long as it took for you to ask your non-question. So, go ahead, Keema. I'm sorry.
So I'm using that book because now, yes, I got this from Edgerton, and this was mid-90s when I was in college, and it's still relevant today, which blows my mind because now I have my notes down here. So if you see me looking down, because I'm looking at my notes. So
wait, you have your notes from college?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, oh my gosh, we definitely hiring you.
Right? No notes from college. So you guys are funny. So from this book, because I've taught my students from this as well. So in addition to doing independent productions and films, I also teach film classes. And I teach film history. And one thing I realized when I was in grad school, because I went to Regent University for grad school, they didn't teach any of this stuff. Everything is from the European perspective and the WASP perspective. And so I had to interject this. So with The Birth of a Nation, if we look at that film, there were 5 types of Black characters that came out of A Birth of a Nation. And 3 of them were related to men. But I'm going to tell you guys about all 5 because with all 5, I feel like the men are influenced by the 2 that the women have been categorized as well. So you got 5 Black characters. You got the Toms, the Coons, the Mulattoes, the Mammies, and the Bucks. So these were infiltrated mainly through Birth of a Nation, but there were hints of them beforehand. So let's talk about Tom. Now, everybody's heard of an Uncle Tom. Now, I never read the book Uncle Tom's Cabin because in the classes that I had, we didn't read those types of books. We read other things that were a little more just different, and we had to write pages and stuff like that, papers on those. But in Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom actually was not a sellout black man. If you look at the real story, his story has been changed. So the origination of Uncle Tom was he was a slave who was killed because he would not sell out other black people. But the way that it has evolved in order to denounce black men is to say that he was a sellout. So when you look at the Tom character, he was submissive, very generous, very stoic. He was loyal beyond a fault to the master. So no matter what the master did, because if you go back and look at old films, you'll see where he, would be beaten and he'd be chased and they would do all these things to him. And he just had this undying loyalty to the master, could believe no wrong in him. We see that with some people now. With this particular president, whether you like him or you don't, there are a group of people who are loyal to this man no matter what he says. They will see words coming out of his mouth with one way, and then 5 minutes later he will say something else, and they just believe everything. So in essence, those people are Toms, but it has definitely been put toward the black man. There were some films that were created with the Tom character. So there was one in particular that I thought was interesting. It's called For Massa's Sake. And this is back in 1911. And this film was about a black slave who had been freed, who sold himself back into slavery just to help out his master because dude had financial problems. That's the level. I know, right? I love your facial expression. So that is the level of the impact of what they wanted the Tom to be, because these characters are meant to appease white society's idea of what they think black people are. So it takes a stereotype and it actually puts it on its head. So if we look at the second one, the second character is a coon. Now we say, people coon and they clown and they're doing all those things. And we use it as a term of endearment. But when you look at how he was created and what he was supposed to do in the films and the impact it has on black men, I think you may reconsider being called a coon. So the coon, he's the total opposite of the Tom. So the Tom is Mr. Loyal, will do anything for massa and whatnot. But the coon was a buffoon. He lacked any kind of intelligence. He was the object of amusement. So Tom's whole existence was to uplift massa. But the coon was there for entertainment. He was the jest. Now, under the coon, you've got some subcategories because it gets a little deep. So under the coon, you've got the pickaninnies. Now, I know we've heard of that. We may have seen them. Those are the little black chillin' that we see in these films where everything amazes them and they're just so simple-minded. They're these little simpletons with hair all over the place, and the hair on the back of their necks actually goes up when you have this small epiphany because, they're just empty-headed little babies, basically. And that was the first representation of black children on the screen. And so you would see them in films, they're sitting around, they're playing, and they're eating watermelon, they're looking unkempt, looking nice and dirty and whatnot. They also called them all kinds of things: snowballs, cherubs, coons, bad chillin', inky kids, smoky kids, black lambs, cute ebonies, chubby ebonies. All of these were representations of the pickaninny. Because if you go back and look at Stymie, wait a minute, I just forgot. Buckwheat, yes, he's one of the most popular ones. Buckwheat, if you remember in The Little Rascals, somebody would say something and his eyes would get really big for this epiphany about soap or whatever the simple thing was. Because, these kids just were not intelligent. Now, there was a pickaninny character that I showed my students in class, and it was a female pickaninny. So most pickaninnies were boys, but this one was a female. And if you look up, oh, shoot, wait a minute. Where's my notes? If you look up, Topsy and Eve. Topsy and Eve is a film from back in 1927. And all I did was show the beginning of the film, and it shows you the power and impact of filmmaking and storytelling. So you see Topsy, who's the black character, who's a pickaninny, and Eve, who's the white one, and they talk about their births. And so with Eve, she comes out of heaven and it's all white and beautiful and the light is there. And she comes down with the stork who's white, and they deliver her to this beautiful family, and it's a safe journey. And the family welcomes them with all open arms of love. Then they go to Topsy, who's born. and it's storming and lightning outside. I think she was delivered by a crow, if I remember correctly. It wasn't even a storm, you know, and it was like this hard journey. And then she comes down to the earth and they drop her in a garbage can. And so to see the impact of what they thought of the pickaninny and the black child was absolutely amazing. So then,
Keema, let me ask this question. So as we start to connect the dots, where some of the Toms exist, or really where a lot of the Coons, and we look in recent television history,
right?
Is James Evans Jr., JJ, is he a Coon?
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Wait a minute, man.
I'm just
my guy.
These are roles that have been created. So,
right.
Yeah, and in some respect, as much as I love all those shows, but I mean, Martin came on and gave us some cooning. George Jefferson, one of my favorite characters. You know, he's smart, but there was some cooning. There was some foot shuffling.
There was. Oh, there was. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I've never seen George Jefferson foot shuffle to anybody. I saw him throw out time almost every episode.
Yeah, he threw a lot of folks out.
Yeah, George Jefferson and Francis were definitely two black men who got to throw white men out of their houses and their property and not get hunted and lynched for it. So there was, I guess, a positive impact you could have of that. Because remember, George Jefferson was just a black version of Archie Bunker.
Right.
And he started on the on All in the Family as well, a neighbor who integrated the neighborhood, and then he was given his own show, so they moved on up. So I forgot what was your question? Oh, do I think they're cooning? Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. They're giving us comedy. Yes, they are cooning and whatnot. And I think sometimes you got to give people what they're used to in order to sneak something new in with them. But when it came to good times, because that's where I was trying to go with it. John Amos and Esther Roll were actually classically trained actors. And so when the show was pitched to them, it was pitched to them with a single black woman living in the project, struggling to raise her family. And Esther Roll said, I'm not taking this role if she's not married. And so they brought on James Evans, and the issue that they started to have was that the Coonan, JJ, became more popular than the parents. Because, again, you have two actors who are well-versed in acting and they know how things should be. And then you have this young man who's got all these little, quick, snappy type of dialogue situations, and the audience is gravitating toward them.
Dynamite!
Right. And so because John Amos was having a problem with it and he was speaking up about it, they killed him off the show. That's why they killed him. Because they did not like the fact that he was speaking up, and he didn't like the way the show was going. And then eventually Esther Roll left on her own terms as well, because it became more about JJ. And if you actually go back and look at the early episodes before JJ was popular, you'll see his rise. His star starts to rise, and they start bringing down the storylines of the well-trained actors and the family, because they wanted it to be a family show where we get to take this journey with them and not necessarily have one person stick out for the coonery.
So can I do one more pitch? One more pitch, man, because I done threw one. I'm gonna throw another one, and I'm glad you're talking about JJ and the good all of that, because I thought it was quite interesting how Eric Monty, right, the creator of those shows, from what I still hear, the brother's still alive, but people don't know his story. People don't know how Norman Lear is revered to this day and getting a lot of checks.
Yes.
And Eric Monty, who did the shows, he ain't got no money. He messed up. Norman Lear did him wrong. You can even look him up on YouTube. He did a few interviews, not that many, about how and what they did to him to pretty much swindle him out of his royalties of those shows that still make money to this day. So I think that's another, like you talk about, we need to hear about these real stories. Eric Monty's the one that put all of that together. You know what I'm saying? Right. Even for what I understand, and I didn't see it as a child, about there was a certain way he wanted to present Michael. But then once he wrote it, that it was allegedly that Michael had to have a hint of an alternative lifestyle. If you kind of notice how Michael did certain things. That's just what, some people say, but I didn't see it. But it was just so much that was just, out of that whole saga of those shows that was quite interesting. So
Right. Mm-hmm.
is anybody ever talking about doing a story on Eric Monti?
I have not heard anyone say that. And based upon what you have revealed, I think he deserves his own story. I did see a documentary back in the 90s about Good Times. And they interviewed the entire cast. Yeah, they interviewed the entire cast about how it was to work on a show like that, because it was groundbreaking. If you think about the shows that came before, they were a lot safer. And, as I talk about this film history thing, back in the 60s and 70s is when you started to see more TV shows and movies that challenged society on society's ills, racism and sexism in Vietnam and poverty, things in the ghetto and all that. So that show was just a natural progression of where film had been going anyway. So it was a lot more edgier than Diane Carroll's show, where she played a nurse and she was a single mom, but everything was cute and safe and all that. Right. So it was a lot different than those types of shows. But they were, yeah.
Let's if we could, and I apologize for trying to fast forward this, but I really want to try to get to the Black Buck.
Oh yeah, I'm about to get to him as well.
And I want to relate this to, this is this weekend or this past week. It was the anniversary of Michael Brown's murder, and
yes.
Stranger Fruit is out, and Michael Brown being the young African American male who was 6'1", 200 pounds or something like that, and was described as some kind of raging, charging animal, and I think that's where the Black Buck kind of comes in. So would you mind?
Okay, so let me give you the last coon, and then we'll get into the buck. So we've got the pickaninnies. We've got the pure coon, who's the one who is always eating watermelon. He's lazy. He's subhuman, because this is going to get us into the Black Buck. He's always shooting craps. This is the pure coon. He butchers the English language. He's the one who would prefer death over any kind of real responsibility in life, which a lot of people will call a Black man lazy. And so that's where it's coming from. So cooning isn't just comedic, it's also talking about the state of the Black man's mind of not being intelligent and then also being lazy. Then the third coon is Uncle Remus. And so he is naive, he's comical, he's quaint. He's the one who is satisfied with his place in life. He don't want things to change. So Uncle Remus is similar to Uncle Ruckus in the Boondocks, because he's not going to really challenge anything. He's going to defend, and I'm just comfortable with where I am because, it's not that bad. So that's your Uncle Remus. So now let's get to the Bucks, because I know this is the one that you really wanted to talk about. So the Bucks were introduced by D.W. Griffith. The other ones, like the Pickaninny and all that, the first person who introduced the Pickaninny was Thomas Edison. He created a short film called 10 Pickaninnies. So he created that character. But what D.W. Griffith did, he took all of the tropes and the stereotypes that had been introduced in other people's films, and he added to it the tragic mulatto, the mammy, and the buck. So with the buck, there's going to be two categories of the buck. You've got the Black brute and the Black buck. Now, you may think that they're the same, but there are some that are some characteristics that are starkly different. So the Black brute, if you think brutal, he's barbaric. He wreaks havoc, always tearing and destroying things. He gives physical violence to people because he is sexually repressed. Because, see, that's going to the white person's idea that Black men are savages and they just got to poke and boink everything that comes along. Or if they don't, they become brutal. They're these brutes. Even if you think about Popeye, remember Brutus, his name is Brutus, but he was big and I know he's not a Black man, but I'm saying just the concept of being a brute. So with the Black brute and Birth of a Nation, they really showed them as being subhuman. And if you go back and look at the film and you look at like their body language and you look at how they kind of slithered around and they were very animalistic and they were very feral. And feral is like a newly freed caged animal. They were full of Black rage. And so that's one kind. You got your Black brutes there. Then you got your Black bucks. So those, now this is what the book said. Those are the big bad niggas. Okay? They're oversexed. They are savage, violent. This is my favorite. They they are frenzied. They go crazy in lust for white flesh. And so the black bucks are the ones who salivate and they have to have that white woman. Huh. Oh, yes. Right. And, you know, when I taught this in my classes, I had students come from all walks of life and whatnot. And there were two young men who are brothers. And they were saying how this literally changed how they wanted to be addressed by the old school guys, because they would call them bucks. Yo, young buck, what's going on? When they found out what buck meant, you're oversexed and you got to have the white woman and your savages and your niggas and whatnot. They asked those men to not call them that anymore, because that's literally what it means. The bucks are oversexed. The brutes are repressed sexually. They're both violent, but the bucks are the ones who got to have the white woman. They got to. And the brutes are the ones who are they're just gonna wreak havoc. We see that in some of our films. We see that in our music. We see that in the way people represent themselves with their clothing and all that. And I'm all about freedom of expression. I mean, I used to have dreadlocks when I worked in corporate America. My son has locks. My daughter wears colored hair sometimes. So I'm all about creative expression. What I'm not about is us living up to these stereotypes because we just don't know. And so the brutes and the bucks are two that have been the most damaging to black men. The last
well, Lamont, at least now you know your identity. You're a buck.
Whoa.
Mr. 22. At least now you know your identity. We're good. All right. Let me ask you this,
yes.
Keema. You know, going to the film, I always ask this question. When white people see black film, is there any sympathy, right? Like when I went to see Detroit, which, you know, I don't know if you saw that or not, but, you know, about the 1967, race riots. And even, you know, Henrietta Lacks, 12 Years a Slave, so forth and so on. We can go on and on and on. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking around in the movie theater like, does any of this rage and issue that's happening, is there any compassion from white moviegoers when they go and see these movies? I mean, for us, when we walk away from those movies, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. I mean, you know, we kind of already know the history, but when you see it on a big screen, it's a whole nother level. Do white people share any compassion when they see those movies?
It really depends on the person. You know, just like they can't, you know, paint us with broad strokes. I don't want to paint them with broad strokes, because there are some people that I've done some work with and I had to block them on Facebook because of the rhetoric that they were posting about Trump and how they loved him. People need to just get over it. And, you know, and a couple of them, I was really surprised because in person, oh my goodness, they're hugging me and, hey, how you doing? Let's have lunch. And everything is kumbaya. And then we get on Facebook and I'm like, wow, is this what you really think of me as a person, or people who look like me? So there are some who think that we're just making a big deal. I mean, really, y'all just need to get over it. It's not that bad. I mean, you're not out in the fields anymore. You get to have jobs. You get the education that we get to get. I mean, my goodness, you know, there's reverse racism and all this other stuff. And then you do have the remnant. You have those who really get it and they understand their privilege. They know that it's real. They understand that, you know, incarceration and brutality and these stereotypes that deal with black people are a lot more detrimental than the ones that deal with even other minorities. Because, you know, Asians are called the model minority, and they're the ones who, I guess, are more acceptable than anyone else to white people. And that can be detrimental, too. So when it comes to whites watching our films, it's really going to be dependent upon whether this person understands what really is happening. Because I don't want to say what has happened. We are still living the effects of the Willie Lynch letter. And if people don't know about that, they need to go back and read it, because all he did was take one generation and mess with their minds. And he said, all you got to do is one generation and then they will do it to themselves hereafter. Well, the same thing has happened with white folks. You got those generations of people who've been taught particular things and then they pass those mindsets down. So that's why some white people can go and watch a film and be unaffected. Because, you know, well, that's not my reality, and that was back then, and so it really doesn't matter. And then you have those who understand, wow, I did not know it was to this extent, and this is real. And I mean, and that goes even with the gender thing. I watched this short video about this politician. He is transgender, so he's a transgender woman, a white male transgender woman. And in his interview, he said he's always been able to live his life freely. And now as a woman, he's been a woman for 3 years and has dealt with so much sexism and so much that his daughters have told him stuff over the years he never, ever thought was true. And now as a woman, he deals with all of those things. And so sometimes it takes people to literally walk in someone else's shoes or have a black child, have a black spouse, have a black grandchild for them to now see, oh, snap. My friends and family aren't as open-minded as I thought they were, because I've seen those stories too. People go and adopt a black baby, and now all of a sudden folks at the church are shunning them when they thought these were open-minded liberal people. So it's.
I'm sorry. Let me ask this.
Yeah,
let me flip it too. Black folks supporting black movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the old saying of, oh, you got to support this movie because it's black? Oh, you got to go, opening weekend because Tyler Perry is out with another Boo movie and a Medea movie. We got to go support it. We got to go support it. We got to
Boo 3 in theaters October.
Real.
I don't know. I'm just messing.
But I want you to speak to two things and I'm done. One, how important is that? And then two, when do we and how do we show up for more black films the same way we showed up for Black Panther?
Okay, so being black, because I'm not sure if you all are, familiar with this, but being black.
No, we're not black at all.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
We're not familiar. We're not familiar with being black. Sorry.
Unfortunately, we carry the burden of our entire race when we do stuff. When you are on the job, you are in a public situation, people are looking to you to be the representative. And if you mess up, that's it. We can't hire any more of them because you know how she did last time. And unfortunately, that's how it is even in the film community. So I am a proponent of supporting people. I think I've seen every one of Tyler Perry's films except, I didn't see Boo 2 because I was out of town when it came out. And I didn't go to the opening weekend of Acrimony. But all the other ones I've been, because my philosophy is if he wins, eventually they will open the doors for other people. And I see it happening because, he set the stage the way that he wanted to. He did it on his terms. He said, screw Hollywood. I'm going to do it in Atlanta and I'm going to bring people to me. So he hires thousands of people because a lot of times we look at films and we only look at the faces on the screen as being the viable jobs. And those aren't, because those faces have a shelf life. We can see how many young actors there are, and then you follow their journey and they start to fall off because only a certain amount are going to be allowed in after 35. Men is a little different. Men get to be silver-haired foxes and they get to be there in the 60s and 70s looking old and decrepit, and they're doing After Effects on their face to make them look younger. But with women, up to about 35, she can be the sexy mom and all of a sudden she's a grandmother at 35, which is crazy. So we have to support each other because the moment that we don't, they're going to say, oops, I told you. We can't do that anymore because they look at us as a risk. They look at us to say, like Black Panther, that's an anomaly. That's not the norm. And so when we have something that's successful and then something else falls, like what was Ava DuVernay's film that came on right afterward?
A Wrinkle in Time.
Yes, A Wrinkle in Time. That is going to cause people a little pause. Well, do we need to now? Should we support Central Park 5 because she is working on that, and she's a black woman, so is she able to do that? So it's a double-edged sword. If we don't.
Meanwhile, white filmmakers make flops all the time. There's tons of white films that fail.
Let me tell you something.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off. I got to say this really quickly. Maynard, who has the colder ice?
Keema, can finish your statements. Please.
Okay, all right.
I know, right? with white filmmakers, and I hate it when someone calls you a racist because you point out racism. Being a racist means I have power and authority over your life to hinder you from getting what you want. So this is not a racist statement. This is fact. If you look at white filmmakers, especially white male filmmakers, they get to discover themselves as they get budget after budget after budget. So if you look at Spielberg, he did Jaws. Spielberg do Jaws?
Yeah.
I had to think about that. So that was his first major film, and I saw a documentary on that as well. He went over budget, He went over time. He felt like he didn't know what he was doing. They didn't have faith and trust in him, but they kept giving him money. He said, no, you got to trust me. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And it was a very impactful film because people stopped going to the beach because of Jaws. But he was allowed that. He was allowed to run over budget and not get fired. He was allowed to run over budget and then get another film. But when it comes to us, because again, we carry the burden of our race, if I go out here and act a monkey fool and do some stupid stuff and mess up somebody's money, we can't give Black women no more opportunities because Keema did such and such and such. So maybe we'll try the brown one over here. Maybe we'll try the Asian one over here, because unfortunately that's how it is for us. So yes, we have to support, but then we have to require better from us, because I am tired of Black people sending me their garbage. I get emails and messages all the time. Hey, read my script. Look at my film. Can you do this? Can you do that? And then I go look at this garbage, and literally it's garbage. It is out of focus. It's dark. It looks a mess. And so we have to stop supporting that and require better.
This past week, I heard Zelina Maxwell come on TV kind of talking about the privilege piece. And she said that some people have been enjoying white privilege so long that equality feels like oppression to them. And yes. So I hear you saying that. And I thought, and that really resonated. Keema, I want to just take a moment and say thank you for participating with 3 Black guys with a mic. Lamont did a good job and did keep us all in line. Thank you, Lamont.
You're very welcome.
I've been checking
and you helped us, because now we know that Maynard is a brute and Lamont is a buck.
Wow.
Breaking that down. I mean, we are so happy, man. They've been having some identity issues this last couple of, podcasts, and now you have brought it home for them. Now you brought it home for them.
Can I mention one other thing?
Yeah,
because I want to give these honorable mention. Now, even though these are roles that were written for Black women, I see that now cultivating and manifesting itself with Black men. So there's a character called the Tragic Mulatto. So it's the Black woman who doesn't fit into either world. And it started in The Birth of a Nation as well. And so the mulattoes that he had, they were longing to be accepted by white people. And they were rejecting their Black side, which is why it was so important in Queen, when Halle Berry went into the church and she said, "As negra," she wanted to be accepted by Black people because she was the tragic mulatto. And then you got the Mammy, and her cousin is Jemima. So they are the overweight, dark-skinned, asexual Black women. The Mammy she's a whippersnapper with her words, and the Jemima is a little more supportive. And the reason why I wanted to mention these, because it's not just Black women who have been subjected to this. If we look at some of the actors, like in the past 10 years, we have a lot of mulattoes, biracial Black men who do not identify with the Black race, but yet they are getting these roles. And they are in these high budgeted films, and people don't know that they're Black. And I had one student, this white girl, first day of class, I was playing something on the screen, and we were talking about one particular actor, so I'm not going to say his name. And I said, he's Black, right? And she was like, no, he's not. I said, girl, yes, he is. So I pulled up an old movie poster of one of his films that he did with some other people, because I was about to say his name. And she saw, because he normally wears a bald head, and she saw him with his hair grown out. She was so heartbroken, because she thought he was white. And I said, no, darling, he is a Black man. And so we see, even though the tragic mulatto has been labeled toward women, Black male roles are now being put in that too, where he's straddling that line. And you have a lot of Black actors who are passing as white in these films and TV shows. All you got to do is look it up. Google Black actors who pass, and you'll see it. And then
wait a minute now. We have a policy that there's going to be some naming the names now. Come on now. Drop
names.
You can name a name.
I mean, okay, so
that's what Lamont does. Lamont's the name dropper.
Oh, okay. We'll leave that to Lamont.
Yeah. Okay, so but no, I was talking about Vin Diesel.
Oh.
I said Vin Diesel is Black, and she was like, no, he's not, because we were talking about Fast and Furious, and I was like, yes, dear, he's Black. So I pulled up the poster from Boiler Room, and that's, if you go back and look at the film, he was just, he's just average Joe Black guy, light skinned Black guy, and she was heartbroken. And then I had some students who thought that The Rock was not Black. And I said, no, his father was a Black wrestler and his mom is from Samoa. So he doesn't even have a white parent. He's a double minority, if you want to call that. And they, again, were shocked in awe because they felt like these were like the safe Black people, because that's what Blacks have gone through. But I mean, there's a girl on The Pretty Little Liars whose mom is Black. She plays a white character. The guy on Prison Break, who's the lead character, his dad is Black. I mean, all you got to do is just go in and Google these things, and you'll see how these Black actors are now straddling the fence. I mean, do what you got to do to survive and get work. Absolutely. Just don't deny your parentage. And don't deny who you really are. So the mulatto is still existing. And then the Mammy and the Jemima, there have been some Black male characters who were the asexual, he's the protector of the family, but you don't see him in a romantic sense with his woman, or he may not even have a woman, in the film or the TV show. There's a few that you've seen, like The Rock.
Well, Denzel in Pelican Brief, right?
No, I'm talking about like the overweight,
okay,
and Black guy. I mean, Cedric the Entertainer has been very fortunate, and I hate to say fortunate like he's not talented. He's very talented, but he's been able to be paired with some beautiful women, Niecy Nash and Vanessa Williams, and be that family guy and be sweet and romantic. But that wasn't always the case, especially for Black men, because after Birth of a Nation, you did not see a Black man as human or as a loving father and mate until the 70s. So it was actually 60 years where, go back and look at films. He doesn't have a wife, and if he does, you never see them kiss. They don't hold hands. They're not in bed together. They're not doing what couples do until Melvin Van Peebles wrote Sweetback's Badass Song. And then he brought out, and then, Shaft came along and all that, where they had all the women that they wanted and whatnot. But because of Birth of a Nation, Black men have been hurt by this. No, we can't see them as sexual beings because they're going to rape our white women. We can't see them as intelligent because he's got to be a coon, or he's going to be disloyal because he's not the Tom. And so that's why, because you asked earlier about the things that are going on with the police brutality and Michael Brown and all that, that has been indoctrinated, but subliminally. It's been indoctrinated. And so these reporters start to slip up in their conversation when they're describing a Black criminal, because I worked at a news station for a long time, and they would put a Black person who got arrested, put their mugshot, but a white person who got arrested, they would put their prom picture or their graduation picture. All of those things are little subliminal things that have been implanted in us to believe that the dude who shot up everybody in Las Vegas, or the guy who shot up the church and then went to McDonald's, he's a little more human. He's a lone wolf. He's not representative of the whole. But you have a Black dude who's done something or done nothing. Oh, he ran away. Oh, he was a threat with his back turned. But he's a threat. And it all comes from this subtle indoctrination that we've seen in our films and TV shows that perpetuates the stereotype that they have about Black men.
Well, Keema, give us a little bit about how we can get you on social and what yes. Tell us that part.
Okay, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram. It's my name, so it's Keema Mingo, very easy to spell. I've got my web series pilot online, which is called Repercussions, the show. You got to put in all 3 words, because if you just put in repercussions, some other stuff comes up. But that is the pilot. I've got over 11,000 views, and a lot of people are loving it, so I'll be going back into production for that. I just finished a short film called Fed Up, so that's in the film festival circuit as of right now. But if you want to see a lot more of my work, just Google my name, Keema Mingo, and you'll see stuff come up on YouTube. I've done music videos, interviews, and commercials, and all those types of things.
Well, we want to thank you for.
Wait.
I'm waiting.
I think it's right, but we got to do this a little different for Miss Keema.
Okay.
I need a top 5, but we're going to let her open it up. It doesn't necessarily have to just be rap. If she want to put...
No, it got to be movies. She's a filmmaker. It got to be top 5.
That's right. But I still want to know what her top 5 is.
Hip hop, though, baby. We still got to... You got
to
have something.
And I'm down with the movies, but I need that top 5. But I say, if she wants to put some R&B, that's cool. But I need the top 5.
Okay, so my top 5. I love MC Light.
Light. Dope.
She is absolutely dope.
Are you writing it down, man?
Yeah, I like that. I write everybody's top 5 down. Oh, okay. Everybody who comes on has the top 5. I write them down.
Yes. Oh, okay. Salt and Pepper, they changed the game because they were a sexy duo with a DJ who was a part of the group, and then they were able to transition into R&B as well. So I absolutely love their music. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got to add Prince, and I know he's not hip hop at all, but Prince. Yeah, I don't even need to explain. Lucy not gonna explain on that one. So Prince, top 5.
I get you. I just
Tribe Called Quest.
Okay.
Yes, love Tribe.
Go ahead and give it to Big Daddy Ken. I know you want to do that.
I was thinking LL, LL.
Okay.
But see, there's a lot of people that I like, though. LL, you're right. Big Daddy Kane, Houdini, absolutely love them. But then I also liked, I guess, the corny hip hop, the safe hip hop with Kwame and all them in the 90s with the high
Kwame was
top.
dope.
Oh, Kwame absolutely is dope. I mean, he wrote the rap to Poison in the car on the way to the studio. So I absolutely love Kwame, and I feel like he has been influential in more than just being an artist, but being a writer. So yes.
I gotta get the top 5 movies. Top 5 movies?
Yeah, top 5 movies.
Oh gosh, top 5 movies. I don't think I have a top 5 movies. I think they all serve their purpose in a different way. So I was like, because there's movies that I'll just watch over. Okay, Brown Sugar. I watch it every time it comes on TV. Love Brown Sugar. Shoot, I think anything with Angela Bassett. Anything with Angela Bassett is something I love, because what's Love got to do with it was they downplayed it and they should have won Oscars for that. Oh,
Cooley High, right? Of course, right?
It'll still make you cry. Yes.
Every time.
And it's funny because I love Purple Rain because, again, I'm a Prince fan. But I didn't even realize how dope Purple Rain was until after he died. And it was kind of recently that I thought about it, how they really took his characterization through a journey, because I'm a writer too, and I teach writing. So it wasn't just a film about music. They allowed his character to go through a multitude of arcs in order for him to grow from where he was to where he ended up at the end. So that was dope too. And I don't know, you guys can pick my last one. I don't know.
Oh, I put The Godfather in there.
The Godfather. Okay. Yeah.
Just put that in there.
Yes.
Thank you, Keema.
Thank you so much. Salute.